Welcome back to our podcast, Why Do We Teach, Episode 4. And today I have with me Miss Edenike, Jalen, and Wille. This week's chapter is Designing Quality Classroom Assessments. And the objectives we will be doing today are select the appropriate methods to assess specific learning targets, follow the steps in the assessment planning process, and create an assessment blueprint. Then use an assessment blueprint with students in assessment for learning. So now we'll be discussing some of our objectives for this week's chapter, starting with Miss Jalen.
Thank you, Ms. Corshell. Everybody, my objective was how to select an appropriate assessment method. So in this chapter, it stated that there is really no single way to test student learning. The right method basically depends on the type of learning goal that is set. So also in the chapter, it showed and it talked about the past trends in education, such as multiple choice tests for easy scoring and switching to performance tasks for a real life field of testing. Teachers shouldn't choose a method based on how easy it is to score or how well it works in life. Instead, teachers should choose a method that's based on how well it fits the learning goal for the student. The goal is to find the best method for students that gives the most accurate and clear picture of how well the students are doing. The greatest way to learn is by putting the accuracy first. So after accuracy, then it comes efficiency, and then employing the smallest amount of work needed to get good results and score quickly. As teachers, we need to select ways that meet the purpose exactly, and then choose the one that saves the most time. Selected response methods like multiple choice can't fully show all the students' ability and can't show all their work basically. So to conclude my section, an assessment mainly works best when it gives correct information as quickly as possible. And this can happen by matching one of the four types of assessments: the selected answer, the written response, performance assessment, and personal communications match with the types of learning. So now I'm gonna pass it to Miss Quashel.
All right. In this chapter, it discusses an assessment planning processes stage. And typically, this includes four steps overall. First, starting with the determining the assessment purpose. And this section is about figuring out how to clear purpose of context. For example, question. Pretty much stating a question: who will use this assessment and how will the results be used? Second, which is figuring out who is the intended learning target. And overall, this section is about determining what is the focus of the assessment and what will it be? And what do you want students to gather as far as information from this learning target? It will also list and show all the learning topics you want to teach. Third, select the appropriate assessment method. And this step is a result of once the assessment learning targets are created and determined, then you can begin to select which type of target you would like to use. Then I want to move into the fourth step, which is pretty much determining the appropriate sample frame. And you are pretty much sampling each assessment to kind of determine or evaluate the outcome of the results. For example, as a teacher, you may be gathering results from the assessment to decide pretty much a conclusion about the level of educational development you got from your students. And pretty much this is based off making their what achievements they made throughout the class, and overall seeing what works for you and what doesn't, and also what works best for your students. So that way you can figure out what type of measures you want to take in the future. And so that's pretty much my objective.
Well, I really like how you kind of connected the assessments to learning because we all know that assessments are supposed to use to like it's almost said like to assess how much they know and how much they've learned so far. What I kind of took from what an assessment blueprint was like instead of an actual physical assessment like either a multiple choice quiz or anything like that, how I interpreted was like a blueprint is used to tell everyone, student and teacher, what is understood and not. So it's not necessarily a quiz. It's like being very open with the student as to what the targets are. This is what I wanted you to learn and da 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 da, kind of laying out like essentially here's what I'm trying to teach you. Let's figure it out. So So the first thing that I got, so my objective was to use an assessment blueprint with the students to for as assessment for learning. So the first thing that I got was, for one, you have to share these blueprints with the students. This helps the students see the connection between the activities, the targets, and the assessments. So I know we were all in school at least once, right? So I remember plenty of times from when K through 12 that a teacher would teach, and it's not that I don't understand what they're saying, but I don't understand what's the point in it all. So I think the point of the blueprint is to be open with the student as to what's the point in all of why I'm giving you the definitions right now, and why this activity is given to you right now, and how it connects to the next thing. So we're supposed to share these blueprints with the students. And this actually increases the transparency of the learning and increases understanding. Because, like I said, if I tell you why I'm doing X and why I'm doing Y and why I'm doing Z, it gives the child more motivation to even want to learn XYZ, because they're like, okay, I have to understand X in order to understand Z. So I'm not a math teacher, but I did teach math for a little second. And like the students would, like, we would go over like the types of shapes, and they were like, I know what a rectangle is, I know what a square is, I know it has right angles. But then I didn't know this time, so I didn't think to connect it all and give them the blueprint. But then when it connected to, okay, well, now we're going over 3D shapes, what's a rectangular prism? They're like, I'm like, well, yeah, a rectangular prism is a 3D shape with all rectangles, but two sides are squares. So, and then, oh, what's the difference between a triangular prism and a triangular, what's the other one? There's two different triangle 3D shapes, or a pyramid, sorry, a triangular prism and then a pyramid. They're different. A pyramid is four triangles and a square at the bottom. A triangular prism is triangles all the way around. So, if I didn't start off going over what all the different shapes were, then they wouldn't understand as well about the 3D shape. So they didn't get why I was going over rectangles. Like, yes, I understand you know what a rectangle is, but it's all about the end goal, right? The second thing I wanted to talk about was that a blueprint helps clarify expectations. So, and this helps the student be more successful, because they know what will be assessed, which targets are the most important, because let's face it, not every little detail is important for the end goal. And then what quality work actually looks like. So when we get to that final assessment, when we're getting to that project at the end, what should it look like? You know, I'm looking for these details here, so why are you giving me details from over there? We know that, like, yes, I taught that to you, but that is not the meat and the potatoes, you know? And this actually leads to more engagement too. And then the third thing I want to talk about is that it helps guide feedback. So when teachers reference this blueprint during feedback, students can understand their strengths and where improvement actually needs to be needed. When I read that part, my mind first went to like a mind map. So if we were able to, and I'll get into that when I get to my reflection, but when we get to a mind map of our standards, if I have, like, here's the big thing and this is how it stretches here, and from here this is where it goes here, 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 and I show them, like, okay, this is what we're learning at right now. We're learning about 3D shapes. Well, we need to stretch here to talk about the 2D shapes and why they look like this and the angles and whatever. And I'll show them, like, hey, you really didn't do too well on those 2D shapes. I was like, so this is why you're now having an issue with this next part, because here is where we're supposed to be talking about this. So that's just where my mind went. Obviously, you can go with other routes with how to help visualize it for the student, but just mind maps is what came to my mind. And this targeted feedback is key for the assessment of learning, because it can actually show them, okay, I didn't understand this part, and that's why I'm having trouble with this next part. And then the teacher and the student can come up with a plan in that moment. And the last thing I want to talk about was that using a blueprint involve the student in the assessment process, which promotes a sense of ownership. So it's no longer just the student being like, well, I didn't do good on that test. It's whatever. I guess I just didn't know this stuff. It's now like, oh no, I didn't do well on this test, or I didn't do well here because I didn't understand this. So now when we get to the unit test at the end of the unit, they'll be able to assess and do a lot better there. So it allows for them not to be passive when it comes to the learning process. Like, they're actively trying to. So essentially, the blueprint just helps the student um, actually understand the entire learning process, because it's showing them, hey, this is what we need to know. This is why we need to know it. These are the places where you can improve on for future parts. But sorry, I know I dragged that on a little long. But I'm gonna pass it next to Wella to continue talking about these lovely blueprints.
So when you was talking about blueprints, what I had in mind, it's not specifically what it is, but I think about diagnostic assessment. So like having prior knowledge, like when you were talking about how you went into showing what a rectangle looks like, what it looks like before diving into the actual what it is that you was trying to teach your
Yeah, I'm with you.
students.
Hmm.
And so when you was talking on that, that's what came to my mind, how important it is when you can provide student prior knowledge before diving into whatever it is that you are teaching, and then along the way guiding their learning, which means doing check-ins, assessment in between to make sure that they are understanding. To piggyback on that, and that's when objective number one comes into play. What I took from that, first, let me just reinstate is select the appropriate methods to assess specific learning targets. For me, what I took mostly from the chapters, because it did focus on a lot of things, but to sum it down, what I took from it is teachers should choose assessment methods that best match the type of learning target being taught. Me teaching at an elementary level, attention span is a very important when it comes down to students.
Hmm.
So knowing that whatever it is that you're teaching and your assessment correlates is matched, not choosing assessment types that is going to not have an end result, teach what it is that you're trying to make sure students learn. Pretty much I'm trying to say, don't waste the kids time,
Hmm.
like choose assessment, to choose how to teach it in a way that they actually are learning and it's not wasting your time. And the reason why I say that too, because when it comes down to the younger children, their attention span is not always going to be sit there for like 20 minutes time, listen to the teacher, you know. So um with selecting the appropriate methods. So when it comes down to your lesson, and if your lesson focus on, if your learning target, excuse me, your learning target focuses on knowledge such as learning facts, rules, vocabulary, um, stuff like that, you just want to make sure that you have short answer response. So making sure whatever is your target is that match that, your check-ins, your informative assessment match what you are covering as far as your learning targets. And then when you diving into, if your learning targets focus on comparing information, you want to use assessment like discussion questions. I can't talk right now. And then my favorite is and I feel like I use this mostly because I am a health and PE teacher, and a lot of ours is more so if it involved performance skills. You want to use demonstration kind of assessment, show me kind of assessment, and then when your learning target requires creating a product like science project or presentation, you want to make sure that you use like a rubric style checklist, making sure that it doesn't is effective enough where students are understanding the criteria, to understanding what it is that you're trying to teach, but also to, as a teacher, make sure that it aligns and is not, I hate using the word wasting the students' time, but by me being a elementary teacher, I see a lot of time being wasted in the classroom and kids lose focus so quickly. So when I was reading this, that's what the big thing I took into place is understanding like, hey, whatever it is that you're teaching, making sure that your check-ins with your learning targets, your assessment with your learning targets, making sure that students are understanding and not choosing the wrong thing, not choosing the wrong way to assess them, and then having to go back and reteach again. So for me, time is very important, not just for adults, for kids too.
I mean,
'Cause you
yeah,
can-
but But like you just said, with the targets, it's like if you don't choose the right targets or like actually talk about what is going to be assessed because you don't want to waste time. So let's say with because you guys were talking about basketball a lot last week. Let's say it's time to do the bounce passes and for whatever reason you're doing a written assessment for it. It's like how are you even going to do it? It's just like, all right, how many
Exactly.
dribbles do you do before you do a bounce pass? It
Exactly.
depends. Like how is the person supposed to
Exactly.
answer that? So you're absolutely right. You gotta align the assessments properly. But that again, that goes back to last week too, with all the different types of targets. If you're doing the knowledge base, you don't have any business doing like in my case, a case study. It's just like, well, if all I've gone over is definitions, they are not going to be apply those definitions in any way if we have not done those targets yet. So yes, we don't want to waste time because also that could confuse them even further as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, got to be careful with that. Make sure that you plan accordingly. That's what I'm getting a lot from this class is plan accordingly.
Plan accordingly.
Don't just be throwing stuff at
Yes.
these kids because it's not going to work out. But um,
Exactly.
all right.
That's exactly what because I honestly, when I started looking at the different types of assessment and how to make sure you're choosing the right one for your learning targets, to be
Mhm.
honest, I didn't know much about the other ones. I knew about performance skills because that's what I do. So,
Yeah.
like, just diving into it and reading it, and I was like, oh, I didn't know because I can actually use some of the other type of assessment within
Yeah.
health and PE. But just by reading this chapter, I was able to be like, you know what, I can actually use some discussion question in there. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like a morning,
Because
you
even with
know.
the like even with the bounce passes, like you could be like, okay, when's there if there's a defender in between you and your teammate, should you do a bounce
Mhm.
pass? Probably not,
Right,
right? Or
right.
it's like if you're going to do one, make sure you do it outside of them. So yeah, I think that's cool. I believe Jalen moves us next to the first reflection of the day.
Yes, 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 yes. All right. For the my reflection, which was, what is the most useful idea? So the one that Mrs. Wale was elaborating on, which was matching the assessment methods to the specific learning targets. I think that is most useful because it ensures and makes sure that assessments are accurately measures to what students know, such as using the selected response and knowledge targets and performance tasks for skills. And a second one is the assessment of the assessment development cycle. By planning and developing and tweaking and using your lessons is highly useful because it provides practical and an ongoing process that teachers can follow to improve assessments over time, making sure that the classroom evaluation is more effective and student centered. The last thing I have is selecting appropriate methods based on the learning types, like personal communication and for reasoning. Stands out because it's more useful because it promotes accuracy and student involvement. So helping students understand their progress regularly. So those are my things that I find that are most useful. Um, Mrs. Wale, I think you're next.
All right. So I had reflection question number 2. And let me see if I can pull it. I don't remember the reading of it. Reflection question number 2 states, well, you know what? Let me just go and dive in. I'm just sum it up because I don't remember
Okay.
the exact reading of reflection question number 2. Um, reflection question. All right, I'm just gonna go ahead and talk about it. Um, I believe I sum it up within my reflection. So, reflection question number 2. This for me in this chapter once again. I believe it's about teaching and learning because um I feel like schools should help students learn and grow, but also is not all about test. I know sometimes sitting in the PLC meetings and principal gets up there and just starts talking about, like last year EOGs, where the kids are, dibbles, and all of this. And my mom was like, because all of that, being a health and PE teacher, I have to learn to be open minded in learning those things too, even though most of it does not really apply to what it is I'm teaching. But I like I open up my mind to actually learn and know what it is that they are talking about, what these tests are. But at the same time, I would like for staff to understand, like, it's not just about tests. Is making sure that they are growing as well, checking for growth. And so that's some of the things I took from that. And then also, one of the key things that I really like um about that chapter is about feedbacks. And that's what I really use within my classroom when it comes down to assessment or doing like skill-based assessment. Giving students feedback really take them from not knowing what they did wrong to knowing what they did wrong. I mean, knowing what they did wrong and how to um correct it and move past that and like move forward to grow is what I'm trying to say. So sharing clear learning goals and giving feedback, which helps students know how they are doing and how to get better. Um, is very important based off of just the whole assessment thing. I think two things that could really be taken in consideration is not just focusing on different tests because of the integrate testing. And we all want our students to do well, but at the same time, we want to look at growth as well. And always, as a teacher, kind of give feedbacks that will help students grow and also help them know how to correct their mistakes. Um, but overall, this chapter, just connects to my belief because it shows that learning works best when teachers plan carefully, are fair, and help students improve every day.
That's good.
Can you guys hear me? Oh.
Yes, I can hear you. So I'm gonna move on to my reflection, and my reflection will be about which strategy or idea from this chapter would feel most confident. Pretty much, I would feel most confident. Can't talk either today, y'all. I feel most confident into implementing. I wanted to talk about pretty much a strategy I would use in the classroom, which is the assessment development cycle process. And the reason for this is personally, I felt this would be a great strategy to implement because it helps give me pretty much a guideline on how to monitor and watch the educational development of my students, which consists of a planning stage, which I would use to determine the target audience for my assessment. Also, I would use the stage to identify each learning target for my students. Then I would proceed with selecting which assessment method is best to use and determining what sample size is the best option for my students. Then moving on towards the development stage, which is all about the teachers creating whatever tasks or procedures or items necessary to critique pretty much what would be the best quality assessment for your students. And then the last part is pretty much using the stage, which is pretty much a grading part of your assessment, which is generally just making notes of the errors and wrong answers that went on in your assessment. And then finally creating a conclusion or revision for future assessments. And for me, this is, like I said, pretty much a great guideline for any classroom instructions or anything a teacher would like to use. And you would just have to change it based upon whatever subject or lecture you're teaching, also depending on, like, I guess, your area of students. And that's my reflection.
The one thing that all of us keep saying is essentially planning. And that is actually the aspect that I am most hesitant upon because my the time I spent in the classroom, of course I planned out the activities, I planned everything, right? But the idea of adding this to the planning on top of maybe having to create a whole new like all new lessons, all new PowerPoints, all new Nearpods, however, like whatever your method is, adding this on top is just sounds exhausting. Mainly because like for me, like I teach science, so it's like in order for me to have a blueprint for my students to actually look at and understand, like I can't just talk it to them. I can't just show them the NC standards. Like I'm going to have to break it down or present. I'm sorry if you guys hear my kids in the background. Okay, you don't. Awesome. But what was I thinking? So it's like for them to actually be able to look at something and understand it, I'm going to have to create something. So, like I said, my mind I'm thinking mind maps would just be the easiest way to go about it. So planning is what's making it hard because creating, or is the most hesitant because you have to create a tangible blueprint for the students to understand. And in my mind, like literally, I already said it, the mind maps are just the easiest way to do it. So planning time to talk to the individual students is also hard because if you have 25 students and 10 of them you can tell are on the lower side, it's like actually taking time to talk to them. You just talk to 3 minutes. That's 30 minutes now you have to set aside outside of just your class time to do that. That means, okay, that means I have to plan an activity that can be done individually that doesn't need me, right? For 30 minutes. And I need to take these kids from their groups or whatever the case is. Or I might have like a whole supplemental instruction, all the other students are doing an activity, and then these 10 that I already know need help, I'm coming over there and then I'm talking to them about it, like, oh, I saw that you had issues with this, that was very similar to this person. But like I'm saying, it's the extra step of planning that I'm thinking about, which is making me hesitant, but it's at the same time, it's not hesitant in the way of just like, oh, I'm not doing that. It's hesitant in the sense of like I might overwhelm myself trying to do the best version of this. And I know this is probably one that I am going to do like for certain standards and not others. Like, for example, if I'm still talking about that math stuff, I'm not going to set aside time to talk about students when it's time to go over the 2D shapes. If you're in sixth grade and you don't know what a rectangle is, we have bigger problems than just you not knowing what a rectangle is, okay? So
You
I
know,
would I would more so save that for like more complicated things. Like when we start talking about like, all right, we're getting into the algebra, we're talking about equations, okay? Now I can start hitting on the kids like, well, we're going over our multiplication tables. Let's say that's the first step. Well, then that means when I get to the actual algebra part, like, okay, U10, you guys are having an issue with multiplication. We're gonna go over our tables. We're going to go over like these things, and that's something, you know what I mean? So I feel like it is planning accordingly. Don't do it for standards or for things that should be very, very simple. Save it for when it's bigger. Or again, just plan. It's one of those, I feel like it's a case by case. Like having a blueprint for every single standard every single week, I think would be exhausting on the teacher's part, especially if you have to plan everything outside of that. Like I remember stressing myself out trying to make Nearpods for every single day of the week and then activities and making the test. I can only imagine me, first year teacher, adding this. I don't know. I don't know if I would have even had the time to do it because I was already spending so much time doing everything else and the grading, and like I just don't know. I feel like it's just, or if you guys have any advice, please share. But that is what I am most hesitant about is how am I going to implement this without stressing myself out?
mhm.
It's just one of those like, yes, absolutely, I agree, but how am I gonna do this? Like, how am I gonna do this on top of everything? So, like I said, I think beginning it would be like, okay, this is a more complicated subject, or oh, clearly they didn't understand this, and we have to redo it next week. I will implement these blueprints next week so I can really break down with the student. It's just, yeah.
I don't know. Maybe you can include that in morning work. I
What
don't
do you
know.
mean?
Mhm.
As far as the ones that like topics that they should already know. That's what. Never mind. I had it in my head, but then I lost it.
But
Yeah.
you're
Sorry.
right. You're right
So, but
because
yeah,
in first
right.
grade, when they don't get the concept from the day before, they give them like practice worksheets for morning work so they can try to catch up to where we are in class during that time, like during the day. So
Yeah,
if they're
because
still
I
on
was
Like a
in the
stage,
warm up?
classroom. I've been in
yeah.
the classroom and I see teachers do that, like morning work.
Hmm.
They'll have them do that.
Like
Okay.
certain
Um,
students have certain warm ups. Like some will have papers from yesterday, like on the same level as yesterday's lesson, and
mhm.
then some students will have like today's lesson, like the new
And
day's
the reason
lesson.
why I say that because the school I'm at a Title I school and a lot of our students are behind.
Behind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Like
That's where I
stuff
was.
that you would think that they should know, they do
They do
not.
not know. Yes, I had a student once when I was teaching math for a second. I was going over just addition with him and he couldn't do it. Like he didn't know how to use his
Mhm.
fingers to add. Yeah, I felt bad because he was also somebody who had a lot of behavioral issues. And I was just like,
Mhm.
"Oh,
Is it because he
this
can't like add?
He doesn't
Like,
have
is it?
at this point he didn't have an IEP 504 nothing.
No.
So I think he was one that just kind of slipped through the cracks, and then it's just now because it seems to be more of a behavioral thing, but I'm like, "Oh, I don't think you're acting out because you have like behavioral issues. I think you're acting out
You
because
don't
you're
understand.
lost and
Right.
you know that you
Yeah.
should not be this far behind." So he actually left the school because we were right when we was about to start going through that process. His dad actually took him out of our school and took him to another school. So I hope
Oh,
I hope that school caught on to it too. But yeah, that's just all I'm thinking about is just the planning aspect of it all.
Hmm.
And just trying to, because I know I would feel guilty if I didn't do it, because then if I did have like certain students that I had a feeling were lost and then I didn't do the blueprint and then they continued to fail, I'd be like, dang, I saw it. And so that's just all I'm
I would
thinking.
just I would just utilize morning work, morning time to like.
But
hmm.
I have
I
I in middle school you have 4 different classes.
uh,
Oh, well, you can't do it like during, like if they complete an assignment early, or give them like certain
And
students separate assignments, like
that's what
split.
but again, that's the planning I'm talking about.
and they don't
Oh,
give you
they.
enough planning time. They don't give you enough
Planning.
planning.
Oh
It's
my
not
goodness,
it's not
that's
like I
true.
love that idea. Like, oh, as soon as you said like, oh, just give them different warm-ups, I was like, oh, that's actually a really good idea. But then I was like, but now I got to plan an
Unless
extra
you do like extra
warm-up.
worksheets,
Oh, you
like,
And
can actually
that also
you
means
can
that I'm
actually
looking out for their work like in real time. You know what I
that
mean?
is.
And I have like 120 students. So that means I am like grading everything in a day's worth. You feel me?
You're
It's
right.
the planning
you
aspect
I
of
can
wish
it.
you had a TA.
you don't
That's
have to actually do that extra. You can actually reach out to the teacher before and see if she has extra work that that child
The
can
students can do.
use. So that way it eliminates the
oh,
planning
Hey,
time for that.
teamwork.
Or yeah, or
Teamwork.
just scaffolding. It doesn't matter because if my kids are ahead, they can still do this work. It just helps them. It just helps
And
them,
then
you know.
I noticed too, some teachers partner students like with their seatings
Hmm.
with the
hmm.
advanced one and partner
Yeah,
them up the ones that behind, so that way they can help each other.
yeah.
I have seen that happen too in the
Okay.
classroom.
We have to do a
That's
conclusion
true.
real
I'm
quick. We
sorry.
got less
Let's
than a
Okay.
minute. We got less than a minute.
to
Go, go, go.
conclude. To, to conclude, teachers should choose the best method aligned with the target. That's a good
Hmm.
one. Assessment development cycle process is effective because it's a great way to monitor and reach students' growth in their education. Ms.
Hmm.
Quashell. And then instead of a physical assessment, a blueprint is used as a way to tell student and teacher what is understood and what's not.
Hmm.
Wait,
Go ahead.
but it is important to plan accordingly. Thank you.
Absolutely. The planning is the most important part. Bye bye, you guys.
Y'all again. Let's
Bye.
go.
Let's go.